I've given myself the task of taking vibe language seriously and then devising an ethics out of it. And today I want to answer the question, where is the vibe? Is it inside? Is it outside? Spoiler, it's both. And I'll walk you through it. The conversation gets really interesting, and the results end up being at the emerging edge of the new and exciting field of cognitive science. So the basic idea is this. There are two vibrational fields. One's happening inside, one's happening outside, and both influence each other and are constrained by one another. Internal vibes affect what's going to happen in the external vibe, and an external vibe will limit or bring forth particular kinds of vibes from inside. So let's dive into the internal vibe and see what the factors are there. The internal harmonic configuration could be thought of in a bunch of different ways, and probably just kind of holding all of them in your mind and layering them is the most accurate view for understanding what this vibrational metaphor means when we're talking about the internal sphere. So I'm going to throw out you a bunch of examples, and we'll get an impression of what it means to be carrying an internal vibe and how that changes moment to moment. First, we can point to what's called our nervous system state. This is involved with arousal and emotion. I can be excited, or I could be like really down. I could be quite smoothed out, or I could be in love and I could be exuberant. All of these are measurable as states of the nervous system, of like kind of firing that's happening, the different responses of the whole organism to that. And they're measurable as an internal experience. Like you feel all that happiness and excitement, and you feel that depression and everything else. Now, the second one, we're going to move quickly. Second one, in Jungian thought, the Swiss psychoanalyst Carl Jung, and in the emerging therapeutic model of internal family systems or parts work, a person or their psyche is thought of as containing a whole bunch of different elements, that all have their own associated goals, that all have their own associated desires, their own energies that they manifest out of the body. They tend to want things. They tend to be in conflict with one another. And when you go through these associated therapies, the process is often of recognizing the parts of yourself that you haven't integrated into your conscious ego and are acting more or less autonomously. So they put a kind of constraint and a pressure on the conscious life you're trying to live. And we can just broaden that out without the metaphysics to say that we've got different motivational systems. There are certain things that we want. I want to eat now, but I don't want to break my fast. I want to sympathize with that person, but I don't want to get dragged into that whole mess. Motivated to build a career and set myself up for a success, at the same time as I want to follow my artistic integrity and continue to do things that are aligned with me. We have different layers of advice and wisdom which can tend to conflict. And then, excitingly, now this is a field that I don't know so much about, and I look forward to diving in further. So it's going to be a little light on details, but we also have the developmental layers of the mind and the psyche. Famously, there's the tripartite brain. So think about like the reptilian brain, the mammalian brain, and then our human cognition on top of that. Now, all of those have, as we said before, like their own motivational systems. They have their own style of processing information. In some ways, they're meant to work synchronously, but they definitely don't always do that. And then finally, for anyone who's willing to follow me all the way over here, in the Vedic system, kind of yoga, Hinduism, this sort of variety, you've got the symbolism of the chakras. So these 7 energy centers, they represent core emotions, they represent core energies, and tellingly, their symbology is often related to a kind of vibrational metaphor. I'm not going to go so far as to assign a Hertz value to chakras or define exactly what they are, but their existence marks a recognition that the human, the mind, and the organism have different modes of operation. So when we're talking about an internal vibe, we're talking about how all of these different elements are acting and moving and oscillating in a harmonic fashion. So, what's the interaction of these? Are they competing against each other? Are they contributing towards a single goal or to one another's goal? Are they having like a dominance hierarchy inside of there? Is there suppression? Is there a free flow of cosmic energy? Okay, we're taking it a bit far now, but the internal vibe is this composite harmonic vibration of all of these forces happening inside of us. And then, quite simply, you can just see this come out as your mood, your perspective in that moment. Whatever the felt sense of being is right now is a combination of all of those things. Okay, so let's leap from there and then talk about this external vibe, this exterior vibe. What's happening out here? So, where is this going, you might think? Out here doesn't have some kind of cognitive energy. It doesn't have instincts and developmental patterns and chakras and stuff. And I would say, yeah, probably not. It doesn't. There's something else that governs the vibe in the external. For one, it could be other people's patterns, other people's little inner bits that cause their mood, their means of expression, the way that they're interacting and joking and somber or whatever they are at that moment. And they are an external force that your internal vibe collides with in the environment. Secondly, the environment itself. Here, nice yoga space, lovely, calm, tranquil. The vibe in here is affected by the hardness of the floor, the light coming in, the fact that it needs to be swept maybe pretty soon, and those plants need to get watered later. And by the music that we put on, the people we bring into the space, all of this affects how the room transmits a kind of information to me to respond to. Now, let's take it to your friends group where you know for sure there's a vibe. What's that vibe? What is that external vibe you're responding to? Well, like we said, it's your friends, it's their vibe that they're carrying, but there's also something kind of between all of you. You've developed a set of expectations, a patterning based on your previous interactions. Some of that might come down to you through your culture, and some of it might be a culture that you developed. And by the way, looking at culture as a set of like values and expectations is a pretty good understanding of that whole term in general. So when we're talking about this external vibe when it comes to people, a lot of times we're talking about the cultural field that you intuit and tune into. Okay, so in this external space, we've got a lot of different things. There's the exact arrangement of all of this stuff. There are the patterns of the people moving and interacting within it. And the ethical conversation starts when the internal and the external field collide. The ethics question in vibrational ethics asks, how can we create more beautiful and productive harmonies from within? How can we create more beautiful, harmonious environments without? And how can we tune and synchronize the internal patterns of mood and impulses with the arrangement of the environment and social interactions so that we can create this better external vibe that everybody can interact with strongly and positively from a place of authenticity. And notice how we're towing the line between what would be two different moral failures. On the one side would be me saying, I am going to stay true to my vibe. It doesn't matter what situation I go into. It doesn't matter who is around. I'm feeling me. I'm going to do me. I'm going to be authentic to myself. That is a moral failing, or that's a perspective that leads to moral failures. And the inverse, I think, is just as bad. So on this other side, now the external vibe is king, and I will submit myself to whatever is going on out there. I won't constrain it. I won't add any criteria of my own. I will become whatever the community needs me to be. And that is rejecting our own power of wisdom and creation and contributing to a vibe in a way that enhances what's going on there or corrects what's going on there. because vibes ain't always good. So, just to sum up where we've come so far, there's this interior vibe. It's made up of a bunch of things in our psychology and in our organism which aren't necessarily unified. They can be. They can work together. They can work towards a goal together. They can kind of flow and just figure it out as they go together. Or they could be at odds and they could use energy to conflict. They could try to do different things and very little gets done except for stress and inconsistency. Or they could start to play the same music and everything starts working in time and you create a kind of consistent vibe, or the vibe flows from one state to another within yourself. And a similar thing happens in this external vibe. You've got an arrangement of space, you've got an arrangement of people and their own moods and attitudes, and those could be at conflict. So, interior harmonics, exterior harmonics, and then this relationship between the interior and exterior. And we're going to take it much further from here. Let me tell you again really quick about what I'm doing here. I'm building an ethical theory out in public. This is an idea that's been like growing on my mind for the last year. And I've got scraps and scraps of paper to create this idea from scratch. They're actually right here. These are my notes. And little by little, I'm going to be weaving these into discussions about ethical theory, about metaphysics, about metaphor, about the reality of all of this stuff that we're talking about here right now. And there are people jumping into the conversation to inform me about their insight into these different ways of perceiving in order to challenge me to be even more analytic in some of these things that we're saying and providing me a lot more context to which to flesh out this theory. The exciting thing is I think this theory is ripe for the picking. I think people are already living it, to be honest. And now we just need to go through and create some of the details so that people understand this ethic that already exists. So I'll be punching some of these videos out to get insights into different parts of the vibe ethics puzzle. Join in with your thoughts and follow along to help with the creation of this thing. Much appreciated. See you in the next one.